Start. Okay. Now we've just talked about, right? We've just talked about what is growth. Then we've talked about disadvantages of growth or limitations of growth, as you can say. Then we have talked about that since growth is not giving us a holistic perspective of how high are the living standards of the citizens living in a country, and therefore we need to rely on development, right? Now, after having all this discussion, uh, now we are moving forward towards what is development, right? So we discussed that development is an estimate of how high are the living standards of a country's citizens, right? Now, there are many factors and variables that affects a country's living standards, like the quality of education, quality of healthcare, availability of economic opportunities, access to capital, and things like that. Now, there are three indicators that we use to measure development of a country: Human Development Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, and Measure of Economic Welfare. Now, let's start off with the first one first, right? So the first one that we're about to discuss is Human Development Index. What is HDI or Human Development Index, right? So this index was created by two economists, an Indian and a Pakistani economist. I do not exactly remember the name of the Indian economist, but I'll quickly check. So Mehbooban Haq, for the United Nations, right? It might say over here, right? Just a second. Right. So origin, right? Okay, so I don't remember the name of the other economist, right? But yeah, okay. Now think about this. Now the way it happens, like the way it calculates, the development of a country. Let's talk about that, right? So Human Development Index is one of the three methods that we'll discuss that are used to estimate the development of a country, right? Now, what it looks at is write this down. So Human Development Index focuses on three dimensions to estimate development, right? And what are those three dimensions, right? Which are as follows, right? So the first one is income, right? The second one is healthcare, right? And the third one is education, right? So these are the three aspects, you can say. These are the three, these are the three dimensions on which a country's development is measured in Human Development Index, right? Now, what happens? Now, this is something that you have to pay close attention to, right? So, Preet, you need to know whenever economists are estimating something, they need to have right? They need to have a statistic that can tell them how well a country is doing on these dimensions, right? Are you getting me? So if an economist wants to calculate the development of a country on the basis of its education or on the basis of its healthcare, then what it needs to know is that how high is that country's income levels, right? So that's the first thing that we'll talk about, right? So one of the dimensions, as I just mentioned, is income, right? Now, how will you estimate a country's income levels? So that is estimated in Human Development Index on the basis of gross national product per capita. Income is estimated through, right? So let me write this down for you, is estimated through gross national product per capita. Now, what is per capita? This might be a new term for you, but it's very simple, and I'll quickly tell you. Gross national product per capita. Now, think about this. Per capita means per person, right? How much is the income in a country? Average income, right? That would be a better word. How much is the average income in a country? That is basically gross national product per capita. So to calculate the gross national product per capita, right, which I can write as GNP per capita or per person. If you are more comfortable with per person, you can also use that word, right? That's simply calculated by dividing the GNP of a country, gross national product, divided by total population, right? So that will give you, right, the income that an average person in that country earns. Now, let me give you an example. So if I have to calculate this for Pakistan, what I'll do is that first of all, I will find a number that what is the total, what is the GNP of Pakistan, what is gross national product of Pakistan, then I'll divide that number with Pakistan's population. So just to give you a quick idea, if Pakistan's GDP, I guess, I'm not very sure, was in last year, it was $380 billion, right? Now, then I divided with the total population of Pakistan, which I think is 220 million, right? Then I just simply find this number, right? And that would give you, right, per capita income of Pakistan, right? Now, 380 should be multiplied by 1,000 because there are 1,000 millions in 1 billion, right? And then I divided by 220, so that would give me 1727, right? So that's giving me 1727. That means that a typical Pakistani per year earns how much? This many dollars, a typical Pakistani. But obviously we know that some Pakistanis will be earning more than this and a lot of Pakistanis would be earning less than this. But this is just an average number that is used as an estimate of the incomes of that country, right? So that's how you estimate the income in Human Development Index. Then the second dimension of development that HDI focuses on is healthcare. Now, for the healthcare, what it actually looks at is basically life expectancy, right? Now, what is life expectancy? I'll write all these down in the notes as well. Life expectancy is the average life that a person lives in that country, right? Now, how do we calculate the life expectancy of a country? It's a very simple process that you find how long people live, right? Now, I'll tell you, life expectancy is basically if there are 10 people or whatever, right? Let's say number of people who died in a year, right? In a country, right? There, obviously, those will be in thousands. Number of people who died, right, during certain time period, and then you just find their average age, right? So what do we mean when we say average age? Time period, right? I'll show you how. Their average age to find out life expectancy. Now think about this. So let's assume, for the sake of simplicity, obviously, let's assume that 10 people died in a country or in a certain area or whatever it is, right? Now, if 10 people died, obviously these people would have died at different ages. So someone might have died at, let's say, 35, someone might have died at, let's say, 65, someone might have even lived up to 90 years, someone might have died by 80, similarly, someone might have died at 75, and so on and so forth, right? Easy? Okay. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And let's say 25, and let's say whatever it is, right? So you add up their ages, right? And then you just simply divide it by the numbers. So there were 8 numbers, 8 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? You divide it by 8. So if the average turns out to be, let's say, 55, then it means that a typical person or an average person dies by the age of 55 years in that country. And that is that country's life expectancy. Does this help? Breathe, right? So a typical person, when we do this calculation, we calculate life expectancy. And how do we interpret life expectancy? Life expectancy is basically a number that shows a typical person lives in that country up till 55 years. Lives in up till 55 years of age, right? So that is what it shows us, right? So that's what you need to remember, right? Okay, now this is how we calculate the healthcare quality of healthcare in that country, because obviously if life expectancy is high, that means that the quality or the quality of healthcare is better, right? Because people are living for longer and stuff like that, right? Then comes in the third and the last one, that is education. Now, how do we estimate in human development index? How do we estimate the education, the provision, the supply of education in a country? That is estimated. So this is estimated through average years of schooling, right? So how many years a typical person goes to school, that is what estimates the that estimates the provision or the quality of education in that country, right? Okay, now final thing, and then we come on and summarize this thing. So based on these three measures, right? Based on these three aspects, healthcare, education, and income, then you assign a final number to that country, right? Then you assign a final number to that country, and that number ranges between 0 to 1, right? So for every country, even if you go and write the Human Development Index of India, HDI value of India, or HDI value of China, USA, Japan, whatever, right? So you'll get a number between 0 to 1, right? So the more it is close towards 1, that means it's most developed, right? Right? So the country with the highest value from between 0 to 1 would mean that it's most developed. And on the other hand, the closer it is to 0, it means it's least developed, right? Making sense, right? So this is what you need to know about Human Development Index, right? Now, if you just go and Google it, you'll get all the estimates for all the countries. Okay, now let's write this down here, right? So for income through audit of a country, estimated through gross national product per capita, right, of a country, right? And what is this? Is GNP divided by countries population, right? Is it simple? Okay. Now for the healthcare, life expectancy, right? And what is life expectancy? Is average person up to, right? Okay. Now healthcare is estimated through life expectancy. And what is life expectancy? Life expectancy is the age till which, right, is the age till which an average person of that country lives up to, right? And last of all is education through mean years of schooling. And what is that? Which is basically of years an average person in that country. Yes, breathe. Yes. Formal education. So formal education just means how many years of schooling a person received, right? So that's what it is, right? Yeah, breathe. Okay. Now, based on these three, dimensions, the Human Development Index assigns a score to every country, right? So which will be between 0 and 1. The more or bigger the value it is, the closer it is to 1. This means that the country is more developed. The smaller the value is, The closer it is to zero, it means less developed a country is, and that is how we estimate the development of a country, right? Okay, now yeah, so I think we're good. We can stop here, and then tomorrow we'll start off with the next measure of development tomorrow, right? But just to quickly recap it, so what we have discussed in today's class, we have talked about what is economic growth. Economic growth is how fast or how much a country's GDP has grown compared to previous year, right? So higher the economic growth, the more recommended it is. Why? Because that means that the national income is increasing at a faster pace, which means that the citizens' incomes are higher, and that therefore it means that they can now afford more goods and services, and that will improve their living standards. But not always economic growth is beneficial. Why so? Because it comes with its own challenges and disadvantages. What are those challenges? Firstly, there is resource depletion. When you continue producing more and more, your non-renewable resources will be exhausted, right? Then with higher growth, with more production, there is more pressure on human resources to work longer, to put in more hours, to work harder, and that means that they can face some healthcare issues. Then another problem is that not always growth is equally distributed between the citizens of a country, right? Some people are earning more, others are earning less. That creates unequal income distribution, which is obviously not desirable. And the last of all is that GDP doesn't account for all positives and negatives, right? So GDP is just a number that tells you how much value of goods were produced or how much value of goods and services were produced. It doesn't show what products were produced. So if the country produced more of military goods, which are technically not enhancing a country's living standards, then that would be a false indication. So country's GDP would be increasing, but that is not really improvement in living standards, because those products were not helpful in increasing the living standards, right? Now, if that is the case, then what alternative do we have? Then another alternative that economists use is the development, right? What is development? The quality of life, the living standards. And what are the three ways we use to calculate or estimate development? Human Development Index, Multidimensional Poverty Index, and measure of economic welfare. No. So they obviously indirectly, there are questions like, you should know the concepts of basic, demand, supply, elasticity, and things like that. But I mean, in A to AS topics are not, explicitly covered. So they've not asked you a question on, basically exchange rate and things like that, because they know that you have already covered and taken an exam in your AS, right? But you are expected to know the knowledge, right? You are expected to know the knowledge. And most of the times you do know the knowledge, because I mean, you have studied and completed that syllabus and you have covered those topics, right? But they don't ask a question directly about a topic that was part of AS. Right? Okay. Now, in Human Development Index, there are three dimensions on which you measure the development of a country. How much is the income of the people living in there? How good is the healthcare? How good is the education? Income is measured through gross national product per capita. Healthcare is measured through life expectancy, and education is measured through mean years of schooling or mean years of education. Right? And then it assigns a value between 0 to 1. The more it is towards 1, it means more developed a country is. The closer the value is towards 0, this means less developed a country is. So tomorrow we'll continue our discussion toward on these two measures of development, and then we'll see. Right? Okay. So I'll see you tomorrow. Breathe. Right? Take care and have a good night. Bye.